If you are over 50, you should never rely on your credit card travel insurance unless you know all of the small print, because it's just not the same as real travel insurance. So in this video, I'm going to show you how the coverage is different. We're going to rank the top credit cards because there are a few decent ones that you should know about, and highlight why a separate policy is the better choice for most trips. By the way, I'm Damien, a licensed travel insurance agent for 20 years now. I've helped thousands of travelers get the best insurance. They use my website, covertrip.com. And here's what you'll get in 5 parts. We'll do an overview of the credit card travel insurance, the benefits, but also the common misunderstandings that catches a lot of travelers off guard. We'll go over the credit card coverages and where they fall short and how they can cost 50-plus travelers a lot of money. There are gaps in those coverages. We're going to rank the actual top credit cards so that you can see how they do, the good cards, and then the best cards. There's actually just one that really stands out as the best, and why a standalone policy is better for most trips. I do say most trips, it's not for every trip. We'll go over some of that. And finally, we'll finish with simple, actionable advice so that you have a smart plan for your trip. Just to take a quick look here, you've seen credit cards all over the place. They're advertised all the time offering credit card travel insurance. There's a lot of different websites that rank the best ones, and they rank those on different scales. But here you can see just a sampling of all the different cards that are offered. Let's go over the overview of credit card travel insurance. Some cards, it's usually the premium ones with a fee, advertise that they have travel benefits for trip cancellations, delays, lost luggage, etc. When you pay for travel with that credit card, that's an important point. It's a big selling point for these cards. They're usually cards for a fee, and by throwing in travel insurance, you feel like you're getting a lot more value out of the card. Oftentimes that fee can be as high as $795. A lot of cards in the $500 range. We'll look at those in a little bit. When planning a trip, many cardholders say, I already have travel insurance on my credit card. And that can be true, but as I said in the beginning, the details make the difference. But the phrase travel insurance is doing a lot of work there. So what does that mean? Is it flights, baggage, medical emergencies abroad, and evacuation flight? What do they really mean by travel insurance? The common benefits with credit card insurance is trip cancellation coverage up to a certain limit, trip delay coverage, lost and delayed baggage reimbursement, and delayed baggage as well, small amounts there, and then rental car insurance. Some cards offer decent perks, but there are big gaps in the coverage when compared to real travel insurance. So next, how the card coverage compares to travel insurance and if that matters for your trip. Over here, I just did a search for popular credit cards with travel insurance. You can see a lot come up. All of these different companies say that they have travel insurance with their credit cards. I'm sure you've seen advertisements on TV for Capital One cards and other cards that offer travel benefits. But let's go on and look at where that credit card coverage falls short. The biggest problem is medical coverage because most cards don't cover anything for a medical emergency. You always need medical emergency when going abroad. That's one of my steadfast rules. The credit card with the most coverage only covers $2,500 of medical expenses, which is far too low. That's not even close to what you need. A separate travel insurance plan can have anywhere from $10,000 up to $500,000 of emergency medical coverage. By the way, the average cost of emergency care overseas can easily be $50,000 to $150,000. It is essential and often required to have medical coverage when you leave the USA. This is my only always buy insurance situation. When you leave the United States, you definitely need travel insurance. This includes trips like cruises where you're leaving the US, but Europe, Mexico, any trip that takes you abroad where your home health care probably doesn't cover you. And here's an important point. Don't rely on Medicare. Even some of the Medigap plans that quote unquote cover you, they don't cover everything, and they always will leave you with something to pay in the end. On the topic of medical emergencies abroad, these cards also aren't as good for emergency evacuation coverage. So let's take a look at a quick chart I made just to show you what I'm talking about. This is something I'll link to in the video, but you can see I've put in all the different credit cards and all the different coverages and what they offer. You can see here in the column for medical expenses, emergency medical expenses, most of them are none. There are some plans that offer $2,500, $2,500 with $50 deductible, but most of them are none and no coverage. So you can see this is a big gap in your coverage. Moving on with where credit card coverage falls short, besides the medical coverage issues, credit cards need to put a limit on the trip cancellation coverage that's included with the credit card. They need to do this because some people might spend a little bit of money on a trip and some people might spend a lot of money on a trip. So they can't have one card cover all their different customers. They don't know what they're going to spend. So in general, cards with a higher limit on this coverage have a higher annual fee. Let's go back to that chart. Here we're highlighting the trip cancellation column, and you can see the limits here are $10,000 per trip or $20,000 per year for the better credit cards, the more expensive credit cards. Some are as low as $1,500 per trip. You have $5,000 per trip. You have these numbers all over the place. For some trips, this might work for a lot of travelers. So that's another gap. They need to put those limits in there, and they're very strict with that. Further, there are exclusions. So for instance, pre-existing conditions are excluded. Adventure activities, these are things that with a credit card, they'll be left out of the policy. With a standalone plan, you can have this included. Credit cards don't have options like cancel for any reason coverage, also known as CFAR, which standalone policies often include or at least offer for you to have. That's gotten a lot more common for people to buy since COVID when they want to know that they can cancel for any reason. It's a small upcharge, but a lot of people are finding it worth it, especially as insurance policy prices come down. It's worth it to upgrade and you're still getting a lot of value for that plan. Activation requirements, of course, you must pay for the trip with the card, which isn't always convenient for every trip. A high cost. So premium cards with better coverage have high annual fees, making the quote unquote free insurance much less cost effective. So the bottom line, credit cards can be enough for lower cost domestic trips. So again, those cancellation limits, so lower cost, and then domestic trip, you're not leaving the country. You should have your health insurance covering you when you're in the United States. Credit cards can be fine for lower cost domestic trips. If you pay the higher annual fee for the better credit cards that provide the coverage that you need, and for people not concerned with things like CFAR or the pre-existing condition coverage. Separate travel insurance will be better for any trip abroad where you need full medical coverage, evacuation coverage, and none of these cards do a great job of that. Higher cost trips that you want fully protected. So if you're going above that annual limit on even the most expensive cards, you'll need to have a separate travel insurance plan to cover that. Or if you want options like CFAR and Pre-X, if you want to have more adjustability with your policy. In general, I think of credit card travel insurance as nice to have if something goes wrong. If it's a trip that you didn't buy insurance for and you remember that you have it and you call the company and you see what they can do for you, that's wonderful. Things like delays, baggage problems, small stuff. But for big trips, it's better to consider a standalone policy. So this is something over on Rick Steves' site. He even talks about in his travel insurance article here, he talks about credit card coverage and how it can be good for things like auto rentals and things like that. But in the end, going abroad, you really do need the medical coverage and some real protection. And here's an article from the Points Guide, a website that covers credit cards and really analyzes them. And they go through situations where credit cards can be enough and when it's just not enough. And in general, the reasons that they're saying when it is enough is for things like delays, low cost cancellations, and baggage delays and things like that. But even they don't point out some of those medical drawbacks, the medical expenses that you can have abroad. So let's get into ranking the top credit cards for travel insurance. To keep this simple, let's just look at the good credit cards and the single best card. We won't take the time to go through every card and analyze why it's good and bad. So remember, at best, they cover some trip costs and baggage, but they never provide real medical coverage. Some cards are okay for domestic trips under a certain dollar amount per year. That's that cancellation limit. And one last thing before we talk about the cards. None of these that I've chosen are affiliated with an airline or a hotel because that changes the equation a little bit. It changes how we compare it because those cards come with extra perks like miles, bonuses, lounge access, things like that. Instead of going through each one of those cards associated with a hotel or an airline, I'll direct you to look at your favorite airline to determine if that makes sense. So the good cards, and I'm going to show you a chart in just a second here. The Chase Sapphire Preferred card, the Bank of America Premium Rewards card, and the Amex Platinum card. Let's go to the chart. So I've identified, and you can see this easily, the card name is on the left, what they do for cancellation, what they do for medical and evacuation, and then the annual fee. So the Chase card over here, you can see, has $10,000 per traveler for cancellation and $20,000 per trip. They have no medical coverage. They have no evacuation coverage. The other coverages, I've grouped these together with trip delay, baggage delay, lost luggage, things like that. And their card comes in at $95. The Bank of America Premium Rewards Elite has these limits for cancellation. You can see they're actually less than the Chase Sapphire Preferred, but they are offering a little bit of medical coverage at $2,500. Again, no evacuation. Their fee is at $550. Of the good cards that we're talking about here, the Amex Platinum has good cancellation coverage at $10 and $20. They do not have any medical, but they do have some evacuation coverage. Again, these are comparable, and there our fee is up to $695 for the year. But now let's look at the best credit card. So the best card, in my opinion, from looking at all these different cards, is the Chase Sapphire Reserve. Let's go to that chart again. I've added a row for this card. You can see these are the three from the previous chart, and then this is the new one that we've added. So you can see the difference here. For Chase Sapphire Reserve, not preferred, you're looking at $10,000 per traveler for cancellation and $20,000 per trip. Now they do have $2,500, a little bit of medical coverage. They do have evacuation coverage, whereas none of these have both of those. Comparable benefits here, and you can see they're at $795 for their annual fee card. So that is by far the best card. All the different websites that rank the cards say the same thing. So you're looking at the trade-off of $795 annual fee for some cancellation coverage. Again, going abroad, this is never going to be enough. So now let's go over why standalone travel insurance is usually better. We've talked about it a little bit, but let's go into the details. Credit card coverage is enough if you travel domestically and if you don't spend more than $5,000 or $10,000 on those trips, depending on the cancellation limit. If you travel abroad, again, cruises, Europe, Mexico, anytime you leave your home country, or if you spend more than $5,000 or $10,000, standalone insurance will be better for you. The comprehensive coverage with travel insurance just has higher limits. So medical emergencies, you can get any amount and up to $500,000 of coverage there. For going overseas, I always recommend at least $100,000, and there are many very reasonably priced plans that have that coverage. Evacuation, you can get up to $1 million of evacuation coverage. Again, it's good to have $150,000, $200,000 of evacuation coverage, and that's included on most travel insurance plans. For trip cancellation, instead of having that annual limit, since you're buying travel insurance per trip, you can insure every cost associated with that single trip up to whatever the full trip cost is. And that would be airfare, the cruise, hotels before and after, rental cars, excursions, anything can be included as a trip cost. And then, of course, baggage delays, lost baggage, travel delay coverage. One of the big things for medical emergencies is having 24/7 support. It's basically just someone to call so that they can help arrange care, get over any sort of language barrier in arranging that care in foreign countries, which is just great peace of mind. On top of the higher limits, flexibility. You can give things like CFAR, coverage for pre-X with a waiver through your policy, adventure activities. Your policy is customizable, so you can adjust the amounts of coverage. You can have it for any length of trip and traveler needs like family plans and annual plans. Again, the 24/7 support is a big benefit. And then the cost breaks down to about 4 to 10% of your trip cost instead of an annual fee with credit cards. So let's go over the next steps for you depending on where you are in this process. For credit card users who want card insurance, if you want a card with solid travel insurance, go for the Chase Sapphire Reserve. It's the best card I'd recommend, but know its limits, especially for medical coverage and with international trips. Now, by the way, for best value, that Chase Sapphire Preferred card really did have a lot of coverage for $95 instead of the $795 with Sapphire Reserve. Now, if you're a traveler going abroad or spending more money on the trips, especially for international trips or expensive vacations, you should get standalone travel insurance. It's more reliable and it covers the gaps that credit cards miss. You can compare all companies and plans at CoverTrip. The link is in the description below. It works just like Expedia does for airfare. Put in your information in one place and you get all the comparison quotes so you can see which one is best for you. If you want to see how your credit card stacks up, you can get that coverage chart that I showed you, just so you can see what the coverage is for free. Sign up using the link in the description below and I'll send it right over to you. And if you are planning a cruise, you should watch this video before you book so you don't make any costly insurance mistakes. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.